Hello everyone, my name is Rich. In the last video, we fetched some data from our database for our index route, and then we transported it into the view. So now we're going to do our next route that we might anticipate from the user experience here, and that's simply we want to actually turn this into a link and then go to the new route, the show route for this. So let's just do that. So what we would imagine, so the actual URL structure for this again follows the RESTful pattern where we would fetch a resource. We'll add another slash, and then we would go to the ID, or we will input the ID of the post we want to get to. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and we get our old friend the route error again. That's because we only have a single route right now in our entire application, and it's expecting very implicitly /posts. That's it. There is no, or very explicitly, there is nothing else it recognizes, so it is simply a broken route. So let's go ahead and make that route. So we're going to go into our routes file, and we will make a new get route, and we're going to go to get posts 1, and then for every other post we will make a 2, a 3, a 4. No, of course we won't do that. So we actually need to make this dynamic, and so the structure for doing that is you create you type in a colon, and then you're now creating essentially a variable name. So we can send in ID, but this could be anything. It could be abracadabra, but we're just going to call it ID because what we're actually trying to fetch is the ID attribute on our database record. So that makes the most sense. Then we're going to go ahead over to our posts controller and into our show action. So let's see what that does. And so we've no longer got a routing error, and it does recognize the post controller, but it's saying I don't have an action show. So okay, let's go ahead and give it a show action. So we'll go back to our post controller, and we will create a show action and refresh there. And we have our missing template just like before. So this is working, and remember it's typing out render posts show here. But it does that automatically for us, so we don't need to include it. So let's go ahead and make our show view, and we'll just send in static data right now, post title right here, and refresh, and here is our post title. So obviously we want to grab dynamic data again. We want the actual title of the post in here. So how do we do that? So we'll go back to our controller, and a big key point here to remember is that when a user accesses a route on your application, everything gets torn down and rebuilt from scratch. That might sound really unintuitive and really unusual, and in fact, it is a reason that the kind of idea of a server-rendered web application is getting more and more seeming like a less preferred application design. But that is what is happening. There is absolutely no knowledge, no state whatsoever of memory of what happened before. So we grabbed this posts variable, we rendered from the post variable all these individual post items, but all of this is completely gone, torn from memory, and as far as the application is concerned, it knows nothing. So when this show renders, this show page gets rendered, there is nothing there. It has no data to get. So you've got to fetch that data once again from the database. So in this case, we only want to fetch a single post. Now, how are we going to get the post that we actually want? Well, so if we go into our console, so if you know the ID of the record you want, you would just send in that ID number into a find method. So I'm going to try and find 1. We actually get an error there because my first post actually starts with an ID of 5. You get to see how many takes I do of these videos because it is just sequentially creating these. But there I go. I post find 5, and we've got our first post here. So that's all well and good. So we know that we have a first post in 5, but of course we don't actually want to grab that hard-coded 5. We want the thing that was sent in by the user. So the user actually, via us creating these routes for them, is sending us some variable data here, and it's that piece after the slash, the 1. So because our route said ID, that now means that because of the magic of Rails, it has sent us a params hash, and on the ID key of that hash, it will fill in whatever comes after the slash right here. So now params ID, we actually, this is actually 1, and we can even show that in our log. If we do a, just to sort of show the output in our log, and we send in the params ID here, you will actually see that, and then I refresh this, and now let's go to our server log running, scroll on up past the assets, and there you can see when it got post-1, it actually spits out the 1 back to us, and it even is showing here the parameters that were sent through, the ID of 1. So, and then you can actually see if I put, Rich is a stuttering fool in here, we don't get an error. And if you look in our log, you can see right here it did send in the exact same thing via our parameters. So that's all great. So now we know how to get that data in from our user. So let's go ahead and find that post. So we know it's on params and we know it's in ID. So that's it. So that's just the same as sending in post find ID. So now we've got the post. We're going to apply it into a variable right there. And then in our show, we will go ahead and embed it in. So that will be an at post, and then we'll take the title. And in this case, of course, we send in the 1, which is no good. We know that it's actually 5 in our database here, and so as you can see, it's sending in first post, nice and confusingly. And then, we'll probably want to, let's go ahead and send in through a paragraph tag, we'll send in the content of our post as well. No big markup there, but there you go, we get the content of our post. So from there, let's go to the next video, and we're actually going to set up our links through from the index page to our individual blog pages.